Once upon a time, there was a small town nestled in the foothills of the Rocky Mountains. It was a place of natural beauty, with rolling hills and crystal-clear streams winding through the valleys. The people who lived there were proud of their town, and they loved the outdoors. They were always eager to explore the wilderness that surrounded them. One day, a group of hikers set out on a trail that wound its way through the mountains. They were a diverse group, with people of all ages and backgrounds. Some were experienced hikers, while others were novices. But they all shared a love of nature, and they were excited to spend the day exploring the rugged terrain. As they hiked deeper into the mountains, they noticed something strange. The animals that lived there seemed to be unusually friendly. A group of deer approached them, unafraid. A family of foxes played in the clearing nearby, and a flock of birds swooped down to investigate their backpacks. At first, the hikers were delighted. They took pictures and fed the animals, feeling like they had found some sort of magical, animal-friendly utopia. But as the day wore on, things started to get weird. The animals became more aggressive. The deer started nipping at their fingers when they tried to feed them. The foxes started snarling when they got too close, and the birds pecked at their heads when they sat down to rest. The hikers started to get nervous. They had heard stories about animals attacking humans, and they didn't want to be the next victims. But they were too far from town to turn back now. They had to keep going. As they climbed higher into the mountains, the animals grew even more aggressive. A group of bears appeared on the trail ahead of them, blocking their path. The hikers froze, unsure of what to do. But before they could react, something even stranger happened. A man appeared from behind a boulder. He was tall and muscular, with a wild look in his eyes. He wore nothing but a loincloth, and his skin was covered in strange tattoos. But what was even more surprising was the fact that he was surrounded by animals. There were wolves, coyotes, and even a mountain lion all gathered around him. The hikers watched in amazement as he approached the bears, speaking to them in a language they didn't understand. To their surprise, the bears seemed to understand him, and they stepped aside, allowing the hikers to pass. The man introduced himself as Wolf, and he explained that he had lived in the mountains for years, studying the animals and learning their ways. He had become something of a legend among the locals, who whispered stories of his mystical powers. The hikers were both fascinated and a little bit scared, but Wolf seemed friendly enough, and they were grateful for his help in getting past the bears. They continued on their way, with Wolf and his pack of animals following close behind. As they hiked, Wolf told them stories about his life in the mountains. He explained how he had learned to communicate with the animals and how he had come to understand their ways. He showed them how to forage for food and find water in the wilderness. The hikers were amazed by Wolf's knowledge and skills. They had never met anyone like him before, and the animals seemed to adore him, following his every command and nuzzling against him affectionately. As the day wore on, the hikers grew tired. They had been hiking for hours and their feet were sore, but Wolf seemed to have boundless energy. He led them up steep slopes and across rushing streams, always ahead of them, urging them to keep up. Finally, as the sun began to set, they arrived at a small cabin nestled in a clearing. It was simple, made of logs and surrounded by a fence. But it looked cozy and welcoming, with smoke rising from the chimney. Wolf explained that this was his home and invited the hikers inside. They were grateful for the warmth and shelter and eagerly accepted his invitation. Inside the cabin, the hikers were surprised to find that it was full of animals. There were dogs, cats, rabbits, and even a few squirrels. They were all curled up together, sleeping peacefully. Wolf explained that these were animals that had been injured or abandoned, and that he had taken them in and cared for them. He showed the hikers how to feed and care for the animals, and they spent the night in the cabin, surrounded by the sound of purring and snoring animals. The next morning, the hikers set out early, eager to explore more of the mountains. Wolf offered to come with them, and they were happy to have his company. They spent the day hiking and exploring, with Wolf leading the way and the animals following close behind. As they hiked, the hikers learned more about Wolf's life in the mountains. They heard stories of his adventures and his encounters with wild animals. They learned about his struggles and his triumphs, and they were amazed by his courage and resilience. But as the day wore on, the hikers began to notice something strange. The animals that had been following them all day seemed to be growing more and more agitated. They were barking and snarling, and they kept looking back over their shoulders. Wolf seemed to sense their unease, and he grew more and more tense. Finally, he told the hikers to stop and listen. They heard a low, growling sound coming from somewhere up ahead. They crept forward, following the sound. As they turned a corner, they saw something that made their blood run cold. There, standing in the middle of the trail, was a massive grizzly bear. The hikers froze in fear, but Wolf stepped forward, speaking softly to the bear. To their amazement, the bear seemed to calm down, and it backed away, disappearing into the woods. The hikers were amazed by what they had just witnessed. They had never seen anything like it before. They looked at Wolf in awe, realizing that he truly was a master of the wilderness. As they continued on their hike, the hikers realized that they had learned more than just how to survive in the mountains. They had learned about the importance of respect and communication, both with animals and with each other. They had learned about the beauty and power of the natural world and the importance of preserving it. And they had learned that sometimes the most extraordinary things can happen when you step outside of your comfort zone and explore the unknown. The hikers returned to their town, forever changed by their experience. They spread the word about Wolf and his pack of animals, and people came from all over to meet him and hear his stories. Wolf became a legend in his own time, a symbol of the wild and untamed beauty of the Rocky Mountains, and the hikers who had met him never forgot the lessons they had learned, both from him and from the animals that had taught them so much about themselves and the world around them.